Last time on The Fall of Gabby Hanna, I went over what I would consider to be Gabby's first major controversy that actually affected how her own fans began to see her. Nearly 2 years ago, Gabby did a shady brand deal, and ended up promoting a scam to her own fans. Although in an interview she would later admit fault in not conducting proper research, many people were still not pleased with her response, and felt that she had contradicted herself throughout the interview. People also thought that she had not properly addressed how she attempted to shift the blame onto her audience when she told them to manage their expectations.
Manage your expectations a little bit.
While she never repeated the mistake, the scandal had a damning impact on her reputation. However, before we tackle anything big and move on to the next chapter, I want to discuss a few things. First and foremost, I promise this isn't all I have to show for my 4 months of absence. This was all originally supposed to be included with Chapter 2, which should be about an hour long on its own. However, my unresolved eye problems have significantly slowed things down and forced me to live my life on slow motion. So I figured I'd upload this as its own thing in the meantime. Treat it as an appetizer, and an opportunity to expand upon the first chapter, as well as touch upon some of the smaller controversies. And be sure to stick around to the end for a sneak peek of what's to come. So I want to provide some additional context to the first chapter, which was about her promotion of the Kenza Cosmetics scam. Now I know what you might be thinking. I'm tired of hearing about makeup. And I get it, I'm not a beauty channel, even though I am kind of a hunk. So I'll add a timestamp on screen that you can skip ahead to, but I recommend that you stick around for this. In an episode of her podcast, which will be discussed later on in the saga, Gabby is talking about the various things weighing on her. One of them being the Kenza scandal, which happened a year and a half prior to this podcast episode. What's noteworthy is the difference between the way she talks about the Kenza situation in her podcast and how she spoke about it in the iNabber interview. In her podcast, she brings up some points to defend herself where previously she seemed to have admitted fault in those areas. The reason I didn't mention this in my first video is because I honestly didn't know. This podcast happened way later than the general time frame of the drama, so I didn't think to look. Good thing this is a series, and I still have a chance at getting my PhD in Gabby Hanna drama. So in the podcast, she expressed frustration at being called a scammer and scam artist and had this to say.
First of all, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but everybody who I directly followed up with who was complaining about it got their makeup brushes.
But just because she and the people she reached out to had a good experience with them doesn't mean that everyone else did. And it's still possible she received a better product than others, which she herself had wondered about during her interview with iNabber.
I'm wondering if I got sent a product that wasn't the same product that everybody else was getting. You know how people say PR is nicer than the actual product.
She stated that Kenza was upfront about their long wait times.
And then when I was like, hey, there's just long wait times, the website literally says there's long wait times, then it was but it's a scam product.
However, if Marky's reporting is accurate, then that would mean Kenza wasn't always upfront about the wait times, and that they just changed their site after people complained. And she was aware people were saying this, judging by what she said in the interview back then.
They're we've always been upfront about the shipping times, but then I saw later people were talking about the shipping times changed and stuff like that. So I was answering everything based on what Kenza was telling me. And now I'm realizing damn, Kenza fucking sucks.
As you can see, she outright admitted she was wrong to believe Kenza's narrative over what people were saying. So for her to still be saying that Kenza was upfront about their wait times is just contradictory and doesn't line up. And then there's the fact that the brushes were advertised as being valued between $70 and $90 depending on the set, even though you could find them being sold for insanely cheap prices on AliExpress. In her interview with iNabber, Gabby acknowledges that although she was aware that these were marketing tactics, she shouldn't have assumed that other people would be.
Just because I assumed that doesn't mean that my 13-year-old audience or older audience is looking at it like that. They were looking at it as I'm going to get $80 brushes.
However, here in the podcast, she only mentions how she was aware it was just marketing.
The brushes were advertised as luxury brushes. How many times do you walk into a store or an aisle of products and it's luxury body wash? Is it? Or is it a way to market a product? I'm sorry, but that is marketing. And I don't know about the other parts of the country, but in the US, have you ever seen QVC or an infomercial where it's usually one is the cost of $100, but today you can have 4 for $20.
She continues to rant about how people have called her a scam artist.
The Kenza Cosmetics situation, wasn't a great one. But to call me a fucking scam artist, that's where it goes too far. There's a difference between holding somebody accountable, pointing out a problem, trying to get to a place where everybody can correct it, and calling somebody a scam artist.
It's worth pointing out that in the interview with iNabber, Gabby is much calmer when she's discussing the incident, and even directly apologizes for it.
I just want to make sure I make it so clear that I'm actually fucking sorry as fuck.
But in this podcast episode, she's just very frustrated in general. And as a rule of thumb, it's typically not a good idea to discuss serious controversies in such an emotional state. But let's also take a look at some of the smaller things that likely played a role in her worsening reputation. In addition to being a YouTuber, Gabby Hanna is also a musician. YouTuber music often gets a bad rap because a lot of YouTubers don't really put much serious thought into it and they just see it as an extra revenue source. So when Gabby released her first single Out Loud and it turned out to actually be pretty good, it was a big deal. She'd release a couple more singles after that and everything seemed to be alright. But then, a clip of her singing started to blow up, and not in a good way.
So what if I'm the monster that's been here all along?
On November 19th, 2018, a clip of Gabby singing her own song in a Genius interview went viral. For those of you who don't know, Genius is a site where people, sometimes the artists themselves, annotate lyrics and explain the deeper meaning behind them. Genius also has a YouTube channel which regularly uploads interviews with artists in which the artist sings parts of their song and then they explain the meaning behind their lyrics. This clip of Gabby singing her song Monster instantly went viral and spawned many memes.
So what if I'm the monster? What if I'm the monster?
Eventually, Gabby decided to react to them in a video. In it, Gabby defends her singing, explaining that Genius had used different microphones that may have affected how she sounded.
The first part of the chorus, before I scream monster, so what if I'm the... They used the boom mic that was directly above me, and then for the part where I yell, monster, they used the audio from, I believe, the camera. So it sounded not meshed. If it was me editing it, I probably would have used all of the audio from the camera, but to me it really wasn't that big of a deal and I really still don't care.
I can see why they would need to do that, since what most likely happened was that her loud singing caused the audio to clip, and they had to use the camera audio for that part instead.
So what if I'm the monster?
Though they should have been more prepared, since apparently Gabby actually checked with them beforehand to make sure she wouldn't blow out the mic.
So I get to the Genius interview and I'm like, is the mic gonna be able to handle this? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll figure it out. We're gonna, before you sing the chorus, we're gonna cut the audio and then we're gonna pull the mic back and blah, 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 blah.
Gabby insinuated it would have been better if they used the camera audio all the way through. And while I didn't think it would make that much of a difference at first, after considering what others had to say, I can understand how the change in audio quality might affect how others perceive her singing. However, Gabby's performance still would have benefited from being more relaxed. Tristan Paredes, a vocal coach known for his reactions, made a video that explains this point pretty well, in which he shows another performance Gabby did that's considerably better.
Same exact key. Look how relaxed and like calm she is and like... That's easy. Those are easy notes for her. That's what I'm trying to say. Look at her face difference here. She doesn't need to be going all out on those notes, and that's what I mean. She's a good singer, she just keeps making the wrong decisions, if that makes sense. The decision to do the Genius interview in the first place, when they're not gonna fix your audio for you, they're not gonna tell you when you're not singing good. I think that's a mistake. Second of all, the decision to sing that loud, I don't think is a good decision. I don't think that you need to do that.
It's worth mentioning that this video came out 5 days after Gabby uploaded her video reacting to the memes, in which she defended her decision to scream, stating that it was an artistic choice.
I wanted to scream. That's how the song is written. That's like my style, and a lot of people don't like that style, and it's an artistic choice.
But at least she made an attempt to sing in the first place, instead of just reading out the lyrics, which she also could have done. Gabby also addressed her poor vocal performance in her lower register.
Everybody who follows my channel closely knows that I was sick for since I went to Australia up until really recently, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with my nose and my throat. I couldn't breathe through my nose at all. It was really difficult for me to get full oxygen in. I was having a lot of problems with like nasal congestion and sleeping at night and really intense snoring for a long time. So when I went in that day, I was super sick, and you can ask the Genius guys because I was blowing my nose in between every take.
Gabby's explanations came off to a lot of people as her just making excuses. Although she set out to clarify things, people latched on to how she appeared defensive, writing comments such as these. She deadass took 7 minutes to defend her singing. Lol watuff. Hey guys, she's not bothered by the memes, but needs to spend half the video defending her singing. I don't really think there's an issue here, honestly, and it's completely fair to defend yourself or at least provide some context, especially if you're being clowned on such a massive scale and feel that people don't have the whole story. Also, it is theoretically possible to have a laugh at your own expense while still wanting to clarify certain things. Looking back, responding to the situation seemed to trap Gabby in a lose-lose dichotomy. If she takes the path of defending and explaining herself, which she did, people will criticize her for that. However, if she takes the path of trying to roll with the punches and get in on the joke, which she also did, people will also criticize her if it doesn't seem authentic enough. In retrospect, the best decision would have probably been to just ignore it, or make some quick jokes about it and call it a day. With Gabby extensively defending herself, trying to signal that she was in on it, and making merch capitalizing on the meme, Gabby does come off as trying too hard. And while you might be tempted to say that Gabby should have just accepted the criticism and said that she needed to do better, most of what she was getting at the time wasn't really constructive criticism, just memes and people making fun of her. She also said that if she didn't choose to belt, she felt that people would criticize her for that.
And also, I saw some comments saying I could have sang it in my head voice, I could have sang it falsetto, and yeah, I could have. But if I would have done that instead, then all of the comments would say, when I heard that song, I knew she couldn't belt that note like that. That's all producing and auto-tune and vocal effects. So with the internet, you can't win. So I sang it the way that it was written because that's the way I like to hear it.
Gabby would later discuss the situation on the Zach Sang Show.
Monster was such a personal song to me about my struggles with like my mother's mental illness and my mental illness and like growing up and stuff like that. So it was such a personal song. So to just watch people
tear it apart,
it hurt. And then, you know, I open up my feed and it's the top 10 videos. Gabby Hanna must be stopped. Nobody likes Gabby Hanna. Everybody hates Gabby Hanna. Gabby Hanna's a scammer. Gabby Hanna's a bully. And I'm like, I literally can't open my phone.
It's worth mentioning that a lot of the videos that were criticizing Gabby were considerably more tame than their titles suggested. But if Gabby genuinely doesn't watch videos about her, then I can see how she might see the titles alone and just assume the worst. It's easy to see why Gabby would be upset, considering the song was very personal to her. Not that having your work be torn apart is ever a pleasing experience. Although posting your art publicly is always a gamble in the sense that people might dislike it and make fun of it, it's only human to be bummed out when something you made that's personal to you is now being clowned on by tons of people. People also pointed out how it appeared that Gabby was pretending to find the memes funny when in reality she was hurt. And Gabby actually addressed this towards the end of her video.
I'm also so ready for all the comments of people saying, look at her pretending to be laughing. She's fake laughing so hard.
Although she did say on the Zach Sang Show that the monster meme was extremely painful, she also had this to say.
I'm sure you've seen the monster meme.
Yeah.
So that was extremely painful. And like at first, you know, I did laugh it off, but then it became this thing where my face was now clickable because it was a meme, and now it's people putting out hate videos about me for literally everything I did was a hate video.
I think this is a pretty plausible explanation. When she made her video, the meme was still fresh, and it seemed like she was trying to take it in stride. But I can see how her feelings about it could start to sour after more and more criticism and general negativity started to pour in. It's worth mentioning that right before the monster meme, Gabby was also receiving hate for a pretty innocuous video she made in which she goes to the pizza place where she worked her first job.
You've never seen a pizza this epic.
Pizza time.
And according to this video by Sebastian Williams about the situation, people in the comments were being hateful towards her and her friends who worked there. And the main points of criticism people had against Gabby seemed to be that she was entitled and annoying and that her manager hates her. Just petty things. Some people took issue with how in the video, Gabby talked about how she used to steal food when she was working. But to give context, she worked there from when she was 16 to 18, and she's 27 in this video, so it's been a long time. However, I do think it would have been better if she said something along the lines of, "Don't do what I did when I was younger," instead of just going, "Here's how you steal food, guys."
This is what I used to do, watch. In between orders, this is how you steal food from work like a pro. And somebody called, State Street Pizza Joe's, how can I help you?
You always hid your food from the camera, so I couldn't see you in the kitchen.
Some people were also annoyed by the fact she did a lot of eating when she was there and said that she's not paying for the food.
I'm not paying for this.
However, this could very well just be a joke. And there was also this part of the video.
I eat a lot of food.
That she ate.
Yes.
The greased pans now.
I can't pay for the food that I ate. So we're
Closing out your day
prepping.
by greasing.
So she might have paid by helping out and greasing the pans, and she also might have paid behind the scenes. I didn't find any negative comments specifically about her boss hating her, and I only found a couple insinuating that her friends did. Gabby also said she deleted demeaning comments people made about her friends.
The demeaning comments that people are making about the people that I worked with and have been friends with for fucking a decade, like those will get deleted. So if you see comments getting deleted, that is what it is. I never delete comments.
I did find a lot of comments saying she was being annoying, and I found a couple on Sebastian's video saying she was disrespectful. With that being said though, this happened more than 2 years ago, and she herself said she deleted comments, so there isn't really a good way to objectively measure the amount of backlash this actually received, but clearly it really affected her. You also have to consider that the monster and pizza incidents happened back to back before Kenza. While none of this excuses the Kenza situation, it's understandable why someone in her position would just assume that it was another nothing burger. If you're constantly crying wolf and picking on someone for trivial things, then it'll be harder for that person to distinguish the difference between a non-issue and a real problem, at least on the surface. People also criticized Gabby for making and promoting her merch, which says "desperate for attention." To be fair, every YouTuber, myself included, wants attention. That's kind of the whole point of making videos for an audience, aside from the 12 pesos you get from YouTube ad revenue. With that being said, however, it's easy to see how people could draw unsavory conclusions from this and use it against her. While I could see how this may have just been intended as a self-deprecating joke or an attempt to own something she gets criticized for, it's an unfortunate decision for Gabby's brand that provides ammunition to people who already don't like her. Self-deprecating humor can be funny and helpful in softening the blow of criticism or insults, but it can also just come off as a cheeky way of saying, "I know what my problem is and I'm confident enough to tell you, but I won't make any real effort to fix it." Also, by making merchandise about being desperate for attention, emphatically promoting it, and wearing it during the entire video, the viewer is primed, consciously or not, to associate Gabby with wanting attention. This is especially bad in the sense that it can cast doubt upon the authenticity of her more emotionally vulnerable moments on the platform. There would be more major scandals to come, with the most notable ones involving fellow YouTubers. But what's the full story? And are the narratives surrounding these situations true? Or are they based on faulty assumptions and unfair bias? Next time, I'm gonna take a deep dive into just one of the controversies Gabby has found herself entangled in. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Be sure to follow my Twitter and Instagram, and if you like what I do, please consider supporting me on Patreon. For those of you still watching, here's a sneak peek of the next chapter.
Gabby Hanna, if you want this attention and you think I just want to talk so much about you, this is it. She told him, hey, be careful, Trish has herpes and you're sleeping with her.
So this is the situation. You find out that a friend of yours is sleeping with them. Is it wrong of you to say, hey, just so you know, I've heard this. Don't know if it's true, but this person told me. Talk to them about it. Ask about it.
But to say you don't call people's name on start drama when there is Instagrams.
Except, here's the problem. The facts don't line up.
I responded afterward on Instagram about the Trisha situation. I did not start the drama. I never start the drama.